This will be what should be the final installment of my Build Your Own Sklar Super Something with Limited Prior Knowledge video series. I was originally going to try and capture the entire build on video, but it turns out that being both an amateur video person and an amateur bike mechanic, these things don't really lend themselves to capturing compelling content. And I really did try to do this, and my one attempt at it looks more like surveillance footage of someone taking a really long time to commit some kind of bicycle maintenance crime. So I pretty much had to abandon that idea. But I can at least show the build stuff as a chronological montage. So here we go. Starting in mid-May, here's the headset, White Industries. It took some attempts, but it did press in nicely using this Amazon headset tool, which took a little fiddling with to get everything nice and parallel, but ended up working in the end. Here's the bottom bracket, also White Industries, torque to spec. I went ahead and assembled and installed the cranks early in the process, mostly because I had them. Everything greased and torqued to spec, and I put the pedals on because I had those too. Here's me trying to figure out how to set the bead on tubeless tires. This also took a few attempts. Lesson I learned. New tires, I think, need to stretch out a bit. These are Ultradynamico Cava JFFs, by the way. So I put them on and took them off a few times before even attempting to seat the bead again. I did also end up having to redo the factory tape job because I think I caused some edges to pull while I was messing around with this, but that was a good experience too. The AirShot canister does work great. About 40 pumps fills it up, and I wish I had recorded my final seating because it was really cool. But if you're doing new tires, they also seem to benefit from the soapy water trick. So I just put some soapy water in a spray bottle and hit the edges on both sides of the tires, and they popped right into place really nicely. I did notice that there can be a little delay for the final pops to occur, like more than a couple of seconds for sure. So I guess the lesson there is not to disconnect the AirShot too soon.
Probably have to try something.
I got a sealant injector kit on Amazon that was big enough to load up just one syringe of sealant per tire, so I don't have to do that twice per tire. I ended up using Orange Seal Endurance sealant. Then I shook and spun the wheels to get the sealant all over the insides. The tires do seem to be holding air. It's been a couple of weeks, and I'm not noticing any appreciable loss in pressure. Next, I installed the brake rotors and rear cassette to the wheels. Torque to spec and taking care not to touch the rotors with my bare hands. I loosely installed the Growtac calipers on the rear because I really just wanted to see how those look. I turned my attention to the steerer and the cockpit. After establishing saddle height and with a new seat post, this is a Ritchey Zero setback, I went to work on determining the steer tube length. I was trying to get as close to even with the saddle height as I could. I used a lot of spacers, as you can see, but not so many that I think it looks strange, at least not to my eye. I attached the stem. This is a Paul boxcar with 15 degrees of pitch, which, in a surprise turn, I decided to stack high and point down. I figure that way, if I ever really need to raise the bars or even go to a flatter upright bar, I'll have some elevation to add without having too much steerer tube sticking out of the top, which I get, but it's not my favorite look. The bars are the Ritchey Venturemax in 46 centimeters. The levers are the Microshift Sword 1x set, and they seem really comfortable. Nothing torqued in at this point, just making sure things feel about right. Once I was satisfied, I marked the steerer tube and cut 3 millimeters short of that mark, cleaned up the cut with a file, and installed the star nut. I got a tool on Amazon for that, which made things really easy, and then I restacked everything and capped it all off. I attached the Microshift Sword rear derailleur, and I checked the bars and lever positions one last time, and then I cinched it all down. I cabled the rear derailleur and then sized the chain. I hadn't waxed it yet, but I did test the shifting anyway with a clean new chain. I don't know why, but sizing the chain and getting the shifting to work right took me more than a few tries and a really long time. But eventually I did get it all to work together nicely. But I mean, I have to admit, I broke the chain so many times trying to figure out the length and putting it back together that I actually had to get a new chain for waxing and for actual use. So there's an extra $30 there. And thank goodness I didn't go expensive or pre-waxed on the chain, because that would have been a costly endeavor. I cabled the brakes, taking care to use the soft housing for the areas around the bars, and then use the adapters that came with the brakes to do the main runs with the supplied compressionless housing. It is absolutely worth it to follow the Growtac directions on centering and securing the calipers and then adjusting the pads. It did make installation really straightforward and surprisingly easy. And then once all of those connections were made and working well, I taped the bars. I don't know if you can tell, but I did a bad job of taping these bars. Like, we'll see how long it lasts kind of bad. This is Ergon Allroad tape in green. I think it looks nice, and it goes well with the Rivendell saddlebag that I have, and I'll show you in a bit. I mentioned before, since this build is 100% new and clean, I did decide to do a wax chain on this bike for starters. You should check out Oz Cycles on YouTube for complete directions. I'll put a link to it in the description. But the way that they show makes it so that you don't have to clean the new chain with a bunch of crazy solvents. So in a nutshell, here's how I waxed the chain. I bought a crock pot at the Goodwill, which actually turned out to be way too small, so I had to buy another new slow cooker from Amazon for like 15 bucks. And then I also got some wax, some PTFE powder, some oil solidifier, and then I mixed it all up and waxed the chain. At this point, it's basically a rideable bike, but I wanted to just finish it all up before I put the wax chain on, so next I installed the front rack. I got the Simworks Obento Rack in black. My plan is to try to use it mostly as a bag support. My outer shell 137 basket bag fits perfectly on it, and I can basically secure it with volet straps right to the deck, with shorter ones strapped to the handlebars. Once the rack was installed, I installed the dynamo lighting. This did require some soldering and a little thought around how the wires would be run. I've got the Sone Edelux 2. This is the same light I use on the Riv. And then the tail light is the Busch Muller Mu. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but it's the little one and it's in silver. I did make a special mount for the tail light so that I could use the shoulder rack boss on the seat stay, which kind of curves. I just used a bit of stainless steel sheet metal from the hardware store. It was thin enough to cut with the back of some old scissors. And then I used a drill press for the holes and bent it into shape. A shape that worked, and sort of cleaned up any burrs and sharp edges with a Dremel and some sandpaper. I also did a special housing for the tail light wire, which I think makes for a cleaner parallel run with the rear brake housing. And then the sheathing sort of matches the frame color, so is maybe a little bit less noticeable than just bare wires. Even though this housing will probably prove to be like a dirt and moisture magnet, I thought it worked out well enough. In fact, I completely rewired the Rivendell in a different color, which looks very clean and colorful now. The front light mount is from Analog Cycles. It was a little spendy, but it was the only one I could find to match the black rack. And as you can see here, everything seems to work. I got a bell on Amazon, and with that, it's basically done. I did roll around the neighborhood to bed the brakes, but there's no video of that. I ordered the frame on September 14th, 2023. Today is June 12th, 2024, so it took me about 9 months to accumulate the parts and put it all together. We are not going to talk about costs. I spread this out over 9 months specifically so I wouldn't feel the pain of how much I spent. Plus, this gave me plenty of time to think about my selections and also how to get myself sort of psyched up and educated on how to put it all together. I'm thrilled about all of the firsts for me on this project. These are my first disc brakes ever, my first drifters ever, the first tubeless tires ever, first through axles. This is my first headstead installation, my first dynamo wiring job. A bike shop did the one on the Rivendell, and my first wax chain. Everything was super fun, and I really enjoyed the build. I found it's best to take your time, think things through, and you just can't be afraid to do some things twice or more to get it right. It's actually making me want to put together another bike already, but I figure we should get some miles on this one first to see if I even did this one right. Here's a shot of the bike on its inaugural ride to Mount Tabor with all of my stuff attached. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this journey, and thanks for watching. I will put the parts list in the description in case you're interested, and I hope this inspires you to do your own build. Thanks so much.